Welcome everyone to the show. Hope you're well. And I'm joined by the one and only Mark Berman again. How are you, Mark? How was your vacation?
I was good, but it's now back to the draft grind. Pleasure to be here, CT. It's been a while. I guess we spoke right after the season ended.
That's right. Yeah, there's been a lot of things happening. But yeah, that's great to hear that you had a nice rest, a break, and I'm back into it for the season ahead. It's going to be a fascinating season, and everyone and Mark, and it starts with the draft night. Last night, the ping pong balls again weren't kind to the New York Knicks. What has it been? 17 straight years, I think, that they have failed to either move up or improve their position as well. What did you take from last night's result?
Well, I thought they were due. It's now actually 18 straight lotteries that they've been in where they either moved back or stayed where they are. They have not moved up since winning the whole thing in 1985. So you'd figure they'd be due, but William Wesley on the dais could not bring it home. Uh, he looked a little nervous. Afterward, he gave big hugs to Thibodeau and Leon Rose, even though we're pretty sure that at the All Star break, William Wesley was not a big fan of Tom Thibodeau remaining as head coach. But listen, 11 is good. At least they have a lottery pick, unlike the Lakers, who didn't make the playoffs or play in and do not have a lottery pick. So we'll
Mm.
see if they use it. I mean, the Knicks are going to be definitely open to all sorts of things, even maybe even trading back a couple of slots. But it's a deep draft, so 11 is good.
Yep, no, absolutely. And like you just touched on, I think it's too early to tell, what the New York Knicks are going to do. The immediate reaction I seen from fans were, oh, they're going to trade it, or they're definitely going to trade down, things like that. I think it's very, very early. The good thing is the combine's going on, and you've been at the combine all this week. What can you tell us? How has the week been out there?
Yeah, well, I got to Chicago Tuesday for the lottery, and then today was the first day of workouts and measurements, where a lot of the guys, did drills, and all the scouts were there, and the executives are interviewing players in the Chicago hotels, but there was no immediate availability for the players, so we didn't get a chance to talk to some of the Knicks targets. Though I did, there's one interesting prospect from your country out in Australia, um, Dyson Daniels, and I did get a chance to talk to his G League Ignite coach today, and that story will be appearing in tomorrow's New York Post.
No, fantastic. Yeah, I think he's going to be around that range. Do you feel like they're going to be, putting a heavy stock in workouts? We know in the past, the situation in the past with players rising up the New York Knicks board, or do you feel like they've been, high on a certain group of guys from the very beginning?
I mean, things definitely change in the final 5 weeks. We're still, more than 4 weeks out. So interviews are very big. It completes the picture just to make sure that, he's a good character guy who cares about winning. I know they're going to say that in the interview, but these guys, Leon Rose and Wesley and Thibodeau, they're trained to know when it's fake. So it's important to get them, and Scott Perry as well. So it's important to see if they have a good personality that's
Mm.
going to fit in the locker room. Uh, but yeah, the workouts have been important to the Knicks in the past. Unfortunately, one workout went too well with Kevin Knox outplaying Miles Bridges in Tarrytown, leading the Knicks to sour on both Bridges. The other Bridges, Mikal Bridges, had a solo one-on-one workout where he basically just took shots, and I think the Knicks were a little disappointed that he didn't want to do the scrimmage with the other small forwards. So anyway, Kevin Knox outperforms everyone in that workout, and they drafted him at number 9 in one of the worst lottery picks in the Knicks history.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of guys that Leon can consult this time. Tom Thibodeau obviously is an experienced coach and has been around this for a long time. Um, you spoke to us throughout the season about Tom wasn't consulted as much as he would have liked in free agency, going back to last season. Do you feel like he's going to have your input as to who might be selected? There are some wings, Dyson Daniels, Benedict Mathurin, who seem to want to come in, and produce straight away.
Yeah, well, the thing with Dyson, which I'm writing in tomorrow's paper, they played him at point guard. He's 6'8", and they were able to play him at point guard because he's such a good playmaker and with a very high basketball IQ. But Mathurin, excellent small forward with size and athleticism. He played at Arizona, and I don't know if you mentioned Sohan, who Seth Greenberg of ESPN told me he feels the Knicks should take him if he's there at 11. I don't know if he'll even be there at 11, can guard 5 positions. But in terms of consulting Thibodeau, I think in the draft they will. And they did last season because he really pushed for Quentin Grimes, and they wound up trading back and getting Grimes. So they really want a player that Thibodeau is going to play. I mean, they don't want a Cam Reddish all over again. As we reported, Thibodeau was not happy with that trade, did not want to make that trade. That Leon Rose and his scouts wanted Reddish as a Knick, and it didn't really work out. They gave up besides Knox, they gave up that Charlotte first round pick. So I think consulting Thibodeau is very important, especially because he's so fussy with rookies. And he's here, all chipper. Saw him. He didn't come to the combine workouts because he was back in the hotel interviewing, but he was in great spirits yesterday. So was Leon Rose. I mean, they're excited, even though they didn't win the lottery. They feel this is the first step to remodel this club.
Yeah, yeah. It's obviously we're in a different position, Mark, at the 11 spot. Last time they're in the 19 spot, and they tried to move up a little too far to get Chris Duarte, Trey Mann, and Trey Murphy. I feel like in the 11th spot there is potential to move up. Maybe not to the top 4, but Mark, the most likely team in the top 6, 7 that's likely to trade the pick is Portland. There's talk that they're trying to see what they can get to please Damian Lillard as well. Do you think that could be a possibility of the New York Knicks getting to that spot?
I mean, sure. This draft, probably after the 4 or 5 top guys, it's kind of equal. It was interesting that Lillard was the representative for the Blazers on the dais, so I don't expect a trade demand anytime soon. But yeah, they definitely would probably want some immediate help, but so do the Knicks. I mean, I wrote in today's post that Indiana is still a potential trade partner, whether on draft night or during July. They have 2 players of interest, 2 players that they aren't sure they want to move ahead with if they decide to go full out rebuild. And that's the stretch big man, Miles Turner, and point guard Malcolm Brogdon, who's a good player, but he has a big contract. And I don't think the Pacers really want to carry that big contract around with Halliburton now on the roster. But yeah, Portland is a possibility. Listen, this is what the combine also is about. All the GMs and scouts are together. This is where they start talking about potential deals, frameworks. So I'm sure the Knicks will have a better read of what they can do coming out of this combine on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely. And let's not forget about the Knicks own the Dallas selection next year. But I feel like with Dallas showing what they're showing, the New York Knicks might look at that pick like, hey, now might be the best time to see what we can get for that pick. With Dallas possibly finishing in the higher up next season as well. The Knicks have the assets. You mentioned Cam Reddish as well. Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, that's a great point about the Mavericks. They look like a franchise on the way up, and who knows? I mean, it could be like the 27th pick in the draft next year. So yeah, that's definitely on the table. I mean, Leon Rose, when he did talk on MSG Network only, he did mention the fact that they had all those slew of future first round picks and second round picks. I can't remember the exact number, but it's a lot. They collected extra second round picks in the past couple of drafts. So these are the moments, these trades where you package these picks, to try to get immediate help because Thibodeau wants to win, right away. Like
Mm.
this whole rebuilding idea is just not Thibodeau, and I think they would have fired him if if they really wanted to go on a very slow rebuild.
Yeah, it's very, very clear that the New York Knicks' direction will be more obvious after this draft in terms of, exactly what you said. Fans have been wondering, with Tom Thibodeau staying, what does that mean? And we'll touch on the veteran logjam in a minute. But Mark, I wanted to ask you about Worldwide West because, I did predict actually on Twitter that he would be a candidate to be on the days. And what made me think that was, seeing him in Dallas, you know, how sort of obvious that was having him front and center in Dallas. Do you think he's going to become more of a public face now? The fact that we've seen him on the days now as well.
Well, the reason why I was shocked is in the seasonal game program that they hand out to the fans, and it's pretty much the same program. They update it with maybe the opponents and stuff, but they list all the executives and the entire coaching staff, the owner, and Wesley was not in the program. And I mentioned it, I wrote it in my Knicks newsletter a couple of months ago. So it's like, why are they hiding William Wesley when we know how influential he is? So I think in some ways this is like a makeup call for that. I think they know that Wesley is going to be a top recruiter of these free agents. He'll be in the room interviewing the college prospects. So let's give him more prominence. Let's take him out of the shadows and put him on stage. I personally thought they should have put R.J. Barrett there. They've never had an active
Yeah,
player rep them on the lottery dais. They've had former players come back to sit there like Ewing and Starks and Allen Houston. So, this was an interesting call to put William on the dais. Unfortunately, he did not talk to us after the lottery selection. In fact, we have yet to talk to anyone from the Knicks on the record so far, and I don't know if it's going to change. The Knicks continuing with their horrific media policy. I just cannot understand why they do not want to send out the right messages to the fans. And we are the messenger, the conduit to the fan base. And it's James Dolan's media policy, and I've probably said it on the show before. Unless the NBA mandates media availability, the Knicks
yeah,
refrain.
yeah. It is sad, that they do the bare minimum basically, and it's the biggest fan base in the NBA, the most valued franchise, which is all the more upsetting as well. But hopefully they talk after the draft, when they made a selection and they don't just put out a statement again. But
They didn't put out a statement after last year's draft. It was unbelievable. There was nothing from Leon Rose after the draft. Not even
yeah.
a press release.
Okay, yeah. Considering they made a lot of moves too, moving up, moving down, all of
Shocking.
yeah, definitely. And you let's touch on a little bit about the veterans, Mark. There is a bit of a log jam. I know Nerlens Noel, Kemba Walker, and Alec Burks' deal expire at the end of this season. They're obviously going to be candidates to be Kemba bought out and the others traded at any time as well. Because the New York Knicks, let's not forget, have the 42nd selection as well. And I can't really see them bringing in two new selections with all these veterans still on the roster.
Right. So um, these are expiring contracts, and you mentioned Kemba Walker being bought out. Well, he'd love that, but the Knicks feel like he could be a trade filler in a big deal. So I don't think they're racing to buy him out yet. he won't be on the, he might be on the roster in training camp, but that he probably won't show up.
Mm.
So listen, Noel could have trade value because his contract will expire. He has that team option. Uh, Burks was of interest to some teams at the trade deadline, including the Lakers. So, listen, they could trade all these expiring contracts and actually open up some cap space for Jalen Brunson. Uh, but yeah, they may have to put a second round pick uh, for someone to take
Yep.
a Noel.
And
Who
Derrick
knows?
Rose.
Derrick Rose. I mean, as much as Thibodeau loves him, if he's not going to be healthy, what's the point?
Yep.
Especially the way quickly emerged late in the season as a point guard, and they still like Miles McBride. So,
Yep.
everything's on the table, and there's no untouchables, and even RJ Barrett and the right blockbuster is available. I mean, let's be honest. If Donovan Mitchell asked for a trade, I cannot imagine the Utah Jazz wanting a package that does not include RJ. So again, everything on the table for the Knicks, and luckily they do have good contracts. Even Julius Randle's contract is not it's not a disaster. It's not like he's making the max.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There's enough room to move for Leon, to get out of some of these deals anyway. But I guess the worry is, like you said, from what I'm hearing from fans, they would love to see Donovan Mitchell, don the orange and blue, but the fear is that it would include an RJ Barrett in that deal, because I can't really see the deal getting done unless it's a 3-team deal. And look, Donovan, the subliminals are there. He's spending his summer in New York. You have to think that the New York Knicks are on his list. And his time in Utah is ticking.
Yeah. Well, listen, Donovan usually spends the off season here, but he's been very visible. I mean, at the Rangers game, uh, on social media, there was something that he may have been hanging out with Emmanuel Quickly, who
Yep.
also was at the Rangers game. Uh, so he has not come out. He said he needed time to think things over. I know Dwayne Wade is, one of the minority owners who is trying to convince Donovan to stick it out. Utah desperately wants him back because next year they host the All Star game and they want Donovan Mitchell to be the face of the franchise. Uh, but yeah, this signs that this is a possibility that Donovan
Yep.
goes the Jimmy Butler route, the Kawhi Leonard route, uh, the James Harden route, and asks out. And the
Or
Knicks are waiting and waiting and praying.
or they move on. They try to move out of Rudy Gobert first to please Donovan as a last ditch effort.
Well, that would be it. Told
Yeah.
that the Rudy Donovan thing is expired. That they just
Yep.
first of all forget about off the court. They're not friends. In fact, probably don't like each other. But even
Yep.
on the court, there's not enough chemistry. There's not enough pick and rolls that work together with them. That the statistics bear that out. So yeah, the sense in Utah is that they're going to try to tell Donovan, listen, we'll move Rudy and we'll get some assets back and we'll build around you going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Mark, just before you leave, uh, I got a question about some veterans, not on the Knicks roster, and who you might think, if the Knicks do bring in a veteran, who do you think out of this list might be more likely between Brunson, Brogdon, Miles Turner, or Zach LaVine?
I mean, the Zach LaVine situation, the guy's going to get a max contract. And it was weird that at the end of the season, it didn't sound like he was committed
Mm,
uh, to Chicago. He wanted to play the field, played for Thibodeau, but it didn't work out when they were together in Minnesota. So I would be surprised if Levine had circled the Knicks as like the top choice for him. But listen, Jalen Brunson, I know a source close to Cuban saying that MARC wants to keep him, especially now that they're in the conference finals. This is a nice little trio with Doncic and Brunson and Spencer Dinwiddie. It's working. So why break it up? It's going to be tough, though, to re-sign Brunson with the Dallas's salary structure. Uh, the Knicks don't have cap space. They could again clear out salaries like Washington did when they signed Dinwiddie. I mean, it's still a possibility, but Jalen would like to play in New York, but he'd also like to play in Dallas if he's paid uh, what he believes his market value is. And now it's north of $20 million. It's at least $20 million. He's played exceptionally well in the playoffs, and he's shown he's a winner, like he's always been a winner. Back to Villanova, winning 2 national championships. I think the Pacers are ripe to talk trade with the Knicks again. They did so before the trade deadline. Miles Turner and Brogdon are interesting. Again, Brogdon's salary is immense, but he's a better defender than Brunson, 6'5" with size. But again, I think Brogdon hasn't performed well enough to justify that salary. So they could get Brunson maybe a little cheaper.
Yeah. My concern is he's about to turn 30 years old too in December as well, with some injury, things to talk about. But last question, Marco. I just wanted to bring up the the summer regiment for the young players. They're in the gym. You reported already. Cam Reddish is healing up, and RJ mentioned he would like to work out maybe with DeMar DeRozan. Have you been hearing about big summer ahead for these young players and any plans for them to work out with anybody?
Well, it's been 2 weeks that they've been back in the gym, a bunch of them working out, mostly the young players, but some guys. Listen, RJ's still young, even though he's going into his 4th season. He's still not even 22 years old. So a nice turnout. He gave him 3 weeks off. Thibodeau did, and they came back. And Miles McBride and Quentin and Quickly and Toppin, RJ. So I'm not sure about Mitchell. Obviously, he's a free agent, and a lot of mystery on what's going to happen there. I think the Knicks will probably see what happens in the draft. I can't imagine they draft Jalen Duren, the kid from Memphis. I'm told he's a project offensively. It feels like he's redundant. They have that type of defensive center. He's not an offensive player, not a shooter. But it's a good sign that only 3 weeks after the season finale, a bunch of guys were back working out. And that's what Thibodeau said after the season. He's got a lot of hope because there's a very hard-working group of young players.
Yeah, and I do think, based on what you've also told us, that Tom Thibodeau feels that they're ready for more minutes. It was an up and down season, and they did prove some things towards the end.
Especially Obi Toppin. As you know, Thibodeau was leery about Toppin. Listen, it's obvious with the minutes that he gave him for so many months and in his rookie year, but he won Thibodeau over in many ways, not just on the court. And he improved his 3-point shot, improved his aggressiveness, played a little better defense. But he saw the intangibles. He saw the spirit. He saw that his teammates love him. And he saw off the court always with that positive energy. And I think Thibodeau is sold. And that's why I wonder about Julius Randle, because a Randle-Toppin tandem is a little confusing, as we've spoken about before, and that's why we wonder if there's a nice package out there for Julius.
Yep. Intriguing, definitely, as well. And I always appreciate your time, Mark, as well. Enjoy the rest of the combine, the week ahead. And ladies and gentlemen, Mark Berman, the best in the business. Again, let's chat soon.
Thanks so much, CT. Always enjoyed it, and hopefully the weather is good out there in Australia. And maybe Dyson Daniels becomes a Knick, and it'll create a little more interest in the Knicks out there.
It would, yeah. I'm definitely rooting for that situation, but yeah, other players as well. But let's see. I'll look out for the newsletter.
All right. Thanks so much, CT.
Thanks, Mark. Take
Enjoy.
care.